Please welcome my handsome and talented friend, Billy Bosch. He's a longtime health entrepreneur, travel aficionado, real estate investor, and as far as this podcast goes, he's someone rare in that he's working on reducing his biological age by 10 years. Right now, he's down 6 or 7 years on that goal, and he's gotten into the best shape of his life and started to just really dial in his health span, not just his lifespan. So, we're going to talk about what health span is versus lifespan. We're also going to be talking about his newest venture, YouthRX, and unearthing the best of what he's learned in the longevity space, as he's also gotten his body fat down to 8% at 42 years old. 42 being what the calendar says, not what his biological age is, folks, just so you're clear. So please welcome to the show, Billy. Thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here, man. Great to connect and ready to dive into all these fun topics.
Yeah. So let's just briefly, if you can go through, your journey from, LSU through Shell, through Iconic, through
It's
being
a
a real
pretty
estate
normal
mogul
path. I mean,
in Louisiana.
yeah,
Yeah,
who
go ahead.
doesn't start in Louisiana, dive into Homeland Security, oil and gas, and then get into nutrition? It's just all logical, right?
Totally
Yeah.
logical. Yeah. Well worn path.
Yeah, I mean, let's rewind back to the LSU days. Got a degree in partying my face off at Louisiana State University. I was having a great time, and I did actually get a degree in business in 4 years, which my dad was like, why do you take an extra year? And I'm like, I didn't know I could. Anyway, so made it out of LSU, had a great time, but for sure more of a social experience, right? And then when I got out of school, I graduated in 2005. And so, it was post 9/11, and I was like really feeling like I wanted to do something in the government. So I actually worked a year in Homeland Security for a sub agency that trained people on how to respond to biological terrorism incidents. And I just kind of wanted to do something in the government. But what I found after a year was that while I found the work meaningful, there's just a ton of bureaucracy in the government, obviously, and a lot of red tape, and like the upward mobility in terms of pay is a bit challenging. So I said, okay, like I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'll just start applying to jobs. And I looked at different industries. I looked at pharma and oil and gas, hire a lot in Louisiana, and other parts of the country as well. But I was like, okay, I'll look at these. I looked at some other industries, looked at tech, and had some sales experience in college because I used to organize ski trips for a few thousand college students every year. And so people were like, oh, that's cool. Okay, you get some sales experience. And that led me to working with Shell. And I actually I had a job offer from Pfizer and Shell at the same time. And most of my friends would have jumped on a job offer from Pfizer. But what I found is like, I really loathed the day-to-day work. Like you guys have seen these reps. You go to a doctor's office, you walk in, you cut in line in front of patients, you basically try to get the right doctor to prescribe more stuff. And then a couple of the doctors like berated us because I'm on like a ride along for one of the interview processes. And you got to wake up at 7 a.m. and wear a suit every day. I'm like, this is all wrong. This is not for me. And then
Yep.
Shell was actually number one in renewables at the time. So I applied to work in renewable energy, which seemed like a new, sexy, cool field. But the bigger part of the business is still oil and gas. So you got to kind of pay your dues there first. But I took a job there, moved out to Houston from Louisiana, lived in Houston for a bit, then worked in Louisiana for a while after that. But what I liked about it was that I learned the ins and outs of consumer products. So they had just bought a massive consumer product portfolio for like motor oil and car care brands, Rain-X wiper blades, Rain-X chemicals, all this kind of stuff. So I kind of learned how to market and sell these things, how to sell into Walmart, all this fun stuff. It made some good money. So during that process, like literally the first day, I had some idea for one of our products or something. And the boss pulled me aside and said, hey man, come see. I said, yeah, what's up? He said, your ideas, just like take them and put them in a box and like hide them somewhere because we don't need your ideas. Like we're a big machine, we're a dinosaur. We don't need these ideas. We just need you to work. And if you have ideas, you should just start a business. And I was like, oh, cool. I'll start a business. I just don't know what. So it's like, oh. So I was like, cool, I'll just make money and bide my time to figure out what I want to do. So I subscribed to Inc. magazine and like, did all these things, started reading books, and, audibles in the car and things like that. And yeah, that was like 5 years though at Shell.
And then when did you leave Shell and start Iconic?
So what
Or,
happened at
or
Shell
did you start
was,
Iconic on the side and while you were still at Shell?
Not quite. So I did do some other things on the side because I was able to work from home. And when you're in sales, like if you hit your numbers, you're good. Ideally, you're working 9 to 5, but it's not like an office where they're kind of, checking that. And so I felt as though as long as I was like ahead of schedule on sales and my goals, which I was every year, then cool, I could do something on the side, weekends, nights, whatever. And so what I started to do was just the first thing I did was throw parties because it's like, hey, why not? So I threw a New Year's party in New Orleans for some friends that went from a couple hundred people to 2,000 people. And that became like a 7 or 8 year project. Part of the proceeds went to charity. And then we were just kind of like rolling that. Me and a buddy were throwing this party. We would just kind of roll the proceeds into the next year. So that was like, side hustle one. Side hustle two is real estate because my dad's a CPA and I grew up working for a lot of entrepreneurs who had real estate. And I said, this seems like how people make money. And it seems interesting. So I bought 2 fourplexes with another friend of mine that I was friends with from high school who was in real estate development. And that was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right near LSU. And we bought 2 fourplexes, had no idea what we were doing, literally no idea, and just kind of figured it out as we went, really, literally painting walls and stuff, right? Just like whatever, repairing fences, putting up new fences, all this kind of stuff. So we did that. And that portfolio scaled over the next, gosh, it's been like, I don't know, almost 20 years. So we've scaled that up to a nice little unit mix in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. So that was side hustle two, where I was just like living super cheap, like eating cheap, living cheap, not traveling a lot, didn't buy a new car, and didn't buy a new fancy TV. I was just like, my friends were blowing all this money they were making out of college. And I was like, I just want to put it into like investments. And then I had saved money to start a new business. And before I started Iconic, I actually left Shell to go take a job to, believe it or not, basically run a nightclub. Okay, so hear me out. With the with what we called it is Go Entertainment for the parties. I said, look, half the revenue is going out the door to the venue. Literally 50% of the revenue, sometimes 60% goes to the venue. So I said, okay, what can I do? I should maybe get in the venue business. So I found a guy in New Orleans that was willing to sell his venue that was like, for corporate events during the day and nightclub at night. And they even had weddings and stuff there. So it's like, cool. He's like, look, I don't want to do this anymore. Why don't you come in? I'll pay you to be the manager. You can look at the books. And if you like it, we'll do an owner financing deal. I said, great. So I left Shell when I had that in hand. So I took a massive pay cut to just be some like basically manager of this venue. But I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And I had a big upcoming bonus coming up at Shell, but I was just ready to, go. 5 years, excuse me, 5 years in, I was just like, can't do it anymore. So I went and took the leap, which was a massive, if you look at polarity, you say, okay, you're in corporate America on one end, right? Everything's CYA, buy the book. And on the other end, you're like literally running a venue nightclub. And it's just like, there's
Yeah,
no
total
growth.
opposite people.
Total opposite. And that lasted about 4 or 5 months. And I actually got fired from that because they fired the whole team because they basically ran out of money and like the books weren't super clear on like how much cash they had. And I got in and I'm like, oh wait, they have no money. So it was kind of a chaotic business. It's okay. You know what? I'll take the summer, figure out what I want to do next. And when I thought about that, one of the issues I had at Shell, the good and bad things was we had these amazing dinners, right? Corporate card, take clients out for dinner. We're having, kid out of college from Louisiana. I'm like, cool, I can have steak, I can have shrimp, I can have wine, I can have beer, I can have all these things for dinner, dessert. And so I'm just crushing food. I had chronic acid reflux and high cholesterol. Like, Brian, I went to the doctor when I was like 27, and the doctor's like, you have the cholesterol of like a 60-year-old guy who's been eating cheeseburgers his whole life. Like, what are you doing? And so, of course, what do they do? Like, if you go to the doctor normally in the US, what are they going to say to solve your problem?
Put you on statins,
Yeah,
right?
statins. One of these acid reflux pills and 2 prescriptions. And I said, this seems crazy. So I went to a dietitian, and that happened actually. I was kind of like simultaneous with the nightclub thing that was happening. I was like talking to a dietitian in New Orleans where I was living, and she says, "Look, you don't need these drugs. Just clean up your diet. You need more protein, less fat and sugar. Like, just have some protein shakes during the day, and like let's clean up what you're having for dinner." I'm like, "Cool. What protein shakes would you recommend?" "Oh, I would never recommend any of them because they'll give you cancer or diabetes."
Mm.
Like, what? cancer or diabetes? What do you mean? She's like, oh yeah, they're loaded with sugar if they're natural, or they are loaded with artificial ingredients like muscle milk and these other products that some of which are linked to cancer. So I'm like, oh, okay, good to know. I'll avoid drinking that then. And
Your advice just led me right down a dead end. Thank you.
yeah, I know. Thank you for nothing. And then so I kind of said in like a smart ass way, like, well, if there's nothing out there, why don't you just help me create one? And she's like, what? No, here's a list of ingredients. Just mix it up. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. It's a pain. Like, I'm going to create a drink. She's like, who are you? And how are you going to create some drink? And why would I be your partner?
Yeah.
All great questions. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and actually, the buddy of mine that I had started Go Entertainment with, he was like on the same page about having similar pain points. So he and I started what became known as Iconic Protein together. And basically the premise was let's have a zero sugar protein drink, um, which was a kind of a novel thing at the time that was all natural with no artificial ingredients. So that happened in New Orleans. Kind of that summer, we got accepted into this business incubator called Idea Village, and that was like it's kind of like a bit of a movie in terms of how businesses start. Like it's. I wish there were more resources like this for people, but basically they helped me kind of formulate the product. They put me through a 6-month accelerator program. And then I went on this pitch circuit, literally business plan competitions, and won like $250,000 in cash and prizes. Made prizes are like services, right, for your business. But I won that. That was
AWS or the yeah.
yeah, exactly. And then I took the money from the entertainment company and like put all that into this venture as well. So, let's say it was like 500K all in just to get Iconic up and running. And that was like a 12-year run of Iconic to just like get the thing out the door and grow it and build a brand.
And did Idea Village? They took a part of the business
They
as a
didn't. I really, hats off to them because they just wanted to help people. They literally just said, hey, look, like we just want to see businesses in New Orleans succeed. We're a nonprofit. So we give you
Hmm.
resources. We help you with your business plan. We help you figure out what the heck you're doing. And it's funny because I just had the idea at the time. And so I went to their pitch sessions and like pitched the idea. And they're like, cool. How many, it's like Shark Tank, before Shark Tank. They're like, how many stores are you in? And like, what's your profit margin? And all these questions. And I'm like, we'll get to that next year because this is just an idea. That's why I'm at the Idea Village. And they're like, oh, yeah, like that's our name, but we actually work with businesses. We don't just work with ideas. And I'm like, might want to rebrand that in that case.
Hmm.
But they said, look,
Hmm.
we like you. We like this idea. So we'll give you a shot, but you have to have a sample of product ready for people to try in 6 months, or else we're just going to basically disavow any association with you. And I said,
Yeah.
deal. And funny enough, you know who the first guy to try Iconic was?
No. Donald
Walter.
Trump.
Close. JK. Walter Isaacson.
Yeah, I know he lives in New Orleans. Actually, funny enough, or part of the year he lives there. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a big New Orleans guy, and he was one of the judges at one of the competitions, and so he came to meet a bunch of the startups. And I literally had samples the day of the end of the program where we're doing. And the guy that was running the program, he was so mad at me because we were supposed to have samples, supposed to have samples. So, and he just like kind of wrote us off. And I went into his office and I just put him on the desk and left him there. And then Walter Isaacson's walking by and I was like, Walter, have any drink for you to try? And he's looking at me like, don't kill Walter Isaacson. Is it safe to drink? And I was like, I think so.
Yeah.
I had some
Yeah.
last night. I'm alive.
Great
Um,
story.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then
so
go ahead.
no. What were you going to ask?
Yeah. So in that story, then Iconic, it goes for this 12 years. At some point during Iconic, I think you also went through maybe a disillusionment with the brand or burnout or
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah. And you want to talk about that? Like,
Yeah.
because
Sure.
what I know of you is now you are certainly no longer living in New Orleans. I think
Mhm.
you also decided New Orleans was not the right place to grow as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I love New Orleans as a city, and I'm from Baton Rouge. Love South Louisiana in general. The challenge is it was very tough to raise seed capital for a consumer products business there. And other businesses have done it. So, hey, look, I'm not saying it can't be done, but I found it really challenging. And I had an opportunity after I was in this 5-year relationship and, broke up. We broke up and I kind of just needed to clear my head. And New Orleans is a bit of a small town. for like a couple to still be running around close to each other with. And I had
You're
a
bumping
friend
into her
invite.
at restaurants and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. She moved like 3 blocks away, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, come on!" So I got invited by a guy that was a mentor of mine who wanted to be an early investor in Iconic out to Southern California, and he's like, "Look, man, you just gotta have a breakup. Come clear your head. Come to Southern California. You can stay on my couch and just like see if you can get this product into some stores because like it's going to be tough going in Louisiana. I mean, look, Louisiana is a few million people. California
Mm-hmm.
alone is like 56 million people. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a huge
Mm-hmm.
market. So I went out there for literally with a piece of luggage. Went out there for what was supposed to be a 2 to 4 week trip, and ended up staying out there for a few years part time. Because I was still kind of in Louisiana part time as well. Just going out there, selling the product, getting in the stores, building a team, raising money. But what I found was it was a lot easier to raise money when you're in the network of Southern California versus in South Louisiana. And that's true for a lot of states. It's like being in New York. You've got more access to capital in these big markets.
Yeah, it's part of I think why you still like going back to Southern California is because it's still maybe ground zero or one of the top places in the world for CPG brands, right? I know Austin,
Yeah.
Texas as well, and you also like Austin for a similar reason.
Yeah, Austin, I would say for natural food and beverage and kind of wellness products, it's like Austin and Los Angeles are kind of the hot spots. And you get
Yeah.
exceptions like Miami's probably a mid market for that. San Diego kind of mid tier market for that. New York's certainly a place. Chicago, but I mean the big spots are certainly the west side of LA and Austin. Those are great places for anything health and wellness.
And
Yeah.
what and how and post Iconic, what did it look like as far as you? How much time did you take off after Iconic before you started on YouthRX? And
Yeah. Look, I
you want to
took
share the
a.
spreadsheet that you put together that was kind of the genesis for YouthRX?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's funny during this process, as people can have either seen or experienced with startups, it's these total extremes of emotion. People I don't have kids, but people compare this to having kids. They're like, how do I describe it? It's like the best of times and the worst of times, right? It's like being single. You're just kind of in this mid range, and then you experience these all new extremes, and that's kind of like it's a bit addictive with businesses. It's like now I'm hooked on the extremes. To have a job and just be in some kind of gray middle ground, it's not for me. But I
Mm,
had some amazing ups, winning business plan competitions, seeing product get on the shelves at Whole Foods, things like that, which is these big time accomplishments that felt really good. And then I had challenges where I got pushed out as CEO because the people that had funded the company, and it was their right to do this, didn't agree with my vision on where to take it. And so they brought in a new CEO. And that was really tough for me. I mean, I ended up getting shingles from that. And so I had this massive kind of health issue where like half my face was paralyzed from Bell's palsy linked to shingles. I had this bad ear infection. I was getting like rashes on my body and all this kind of stuff. And the doctor's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "A little bit of stress right now, I guess." And he's like, "Yeah, well, if you want to heal yourself, you're going to have to deal with stress." So, that was probably right kind of in the middle of COVID. And so around 2020, 2021, I really did a deep dive on myself to figure out, okay, like this is crazy. I'm not well running a wellness company. Like how can I like fix this? And so in the
square that incongruency, let's say.
exactly. And that became this journey into, what is longevity? Aging is now recognized as a disease. What type of protocol should I put together for myself? And it's, the last, 4 or 5 years have really been going super deep on this to figure out, okay, like how can I do this in a practical way? And it's great to see people like Brian Johnson raising awareness around longevity, but like I don't want his life. I don't want to eat bean paste every day. I don't want to have to constantly get blood transfusions from my child. Things like this.
Is
Like,
he doing that?
yeah, man, he's doing like blood swaps with his kid and testing all the food he eats and eats like once a day, like a bunch of like plant food. Which, hey, man, be a vegan if you want, but I like eating, well sourced meat and animal protein
Mm,
along with vegetables. So
mm,
it's just I want to be in the sun too. Like it's just like I want to live a more like I want to enjoy my life. It's about having like
mm,
life in the years, not just having years. So that's kind of been my perspective, and that's That's what's been infused into this new company and product. And I also do like some more of a kind of concierge thing, but like for a small group of people. I do longevity coaching, and help them figure out how to reduce their age by like 5 to 10 years and give them years back. A lot of times it's like entrepreneurs that come to me and say, hey man, like I've just left it all in the field with my business. Like I neglected my body, I neglected my family, I neglected all these things. And you can't go back and reverse things, obviously, but I can give people healthy years back, right?
Mhm.
I can infuse their lives with some youth so that they can make up, in a way, at least make up a little bit for some lost time there.
Yeah, I think you told me a story a year ago or whatnot where when you would go back to Louisiana, or you'd see some of the guys that you went to school with and were in Fiji with you that
Yeah.
they're in their 40s as well, and they look really beaten up, right? And they're still yeah, getting after it on the weekends, drinking, doing whatever, and they would look at you and be like, Billy, I need some of what you got, or I need your help, or they were kind of joking, but I think they were also recognized that they were not headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
those guys come to you, or is it almost entirely entrepreneurs, or like who's reaching
It's a
out to you for
mix.
this concierge stuff?
Yeah, so the people that reach out to me, those guys are more reaching out to see like, hey, what supplement are you taking? Give me like a quick fix, and that's not the quick fix I recommend. But I always say, look, if you're going to take one, I'll tell you what works for me. Really, you should be doing it based on your blood work. But if you want some like anti-aging kind of supplements that aren't, it's like I take these regardless of where my blood work's at, because it's not something that's going to be like naturally occurring. Then cool, I'll put together a mix for you, which I've done. And then a lot of people that reach out to me, it's people in my networks like EO and YPO and other entrepreneur groups like we're in, that come to me and just say, hey, look, man, like you look great. What
Yep.
what are you doing that I'm not? And that happened
Yep.
at one of the, we have a Christmas dinner where we kind of, or sorry, I should say Christmas lunch in New Orleans. I do with some buddies, and one of them sitting across the table, and he probably looks 10 years older than I do, and he says, "Man, like, what are you doing that I didn't? Like, where did I take a wrong turn? Because clearly we're in different places right now." Like, you know. And look, I don't look perfect, but I put a lot of work into my body and my diet, and avoided a lot of things, and probably could have had a lot more enjoyment, eating and drinking certain things. But like, I'm trying to play the long game here and balance things out. But yeah, a lot of the people that come to me, they're executives or CEOs that have just neglected their body and other elements and people in their life, and they're coming to me to get more time back.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And they look at your skincare and go, your skincare regime, go, hey, your skin also looks really good, right? That's also part
right.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not
Yeah. I
just
know when you
genetics. I mean, my brother takes great care of himself, but he worked a lot of years out in the sun, and maybe didn't use as much facial protection and things like this. And he's 9 years younger. And some people, when they see us, out, they'll
think he's
say,
older.
"Are you guys twins? He looks older." And I'm like, "Dude, he's 9 years younger." When? I mean, I never let him live that down. That's great. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, what's in this longevity stack that is recommended for everyone, regardless of their blood work that you touched on?
Yeah, so really, it's what's at the bottom of the stack. So the way the supplement regulations are work out, you have to kind of list your like vitamins at the top, and then like the other kind of like we'll say non-traditional stuff in the bottom. Um, and so essentially, like, that bottom part is the important stuff, because you can get a lot, the first top half of the ingredients you can get in, let's say, like a multivitamin or take things. So we've got the basics like vitamin C, vitamin D3, vitamin K2, all functional doses of B vitamin stack, magnesium, choline, which is good, but you can get the choline you can get from eggs. Some of this other stuff you can get from your diet. Now, where things are different, where a lot of things you're not going to necessarily get in these dosages in your diet, things like creatine, glycine. Creatine's neuroprotective, glycine's great antioxidant. We've got NR. NR you're not going to find like out there naturally occurring in the doses you need. Spermidine, L-theanine, hyaluronic acid, calcium alpha ketoglutarate. These types of things I've personally sourced, because when I look at the data from the biological age testing companies, some of them will disclose, and some of them I have inside info from, that, and they'll see, when if Brian sends in his test for biological age testing, they're going to ask you, what supplements do you take? And you're going to say, I take X, Y, and Z, or I don't take anything, right? And so they have all this collective data analysis of, okay, what supplements are people taking that are driving the lowest biological age and also driving the slowest pace of aging. So it's things like glycine, NR, CAKG, spermidine's another one. So like I said, okay, let me get some really meaningful ingredients, because typically you got to buy all these things separately and put them all in the stack. And the other thing, the way this formula works is it's going to be like an iPhone. It's always going to update. So this isn't the formula we'll have forever. If I see something that's more effective, I'm going to swap it out. I'm always going to be kind of tweaking things. So that's the idea behind, the brand is called YouthRX. So like the prescription for youth. And this is our daily longevity mix. So some people may be familiar with like a greens mix, like an athletic greens. It's kind of like that, like an all-in-one mix, but there's no greens. It's just longevity supplements and ingredients, right? So we take that premise and that style of a product and just make it easy. So people take a scoop of powder, mix it with water, and done deal. And I'm like a chronic oversimplifier, as you probably know. We've hung out a ton, and I'm just like, yeah, we'll just take this and do this. And people are like, what? It's not that easy, man. I'm like, it could be. It could be. People, I always say we're living in a world where people are landing rockets backwards from outer space. Not one company, but two companies, probably three now. So if that's possible, like we could make some innovative products.
And so this is meant to be taken in the morning, first thing.
Yeah,
And then
ideally in
does
the
it
morning. I mean,
go?
you can take it in the afternoon. It doesn't have a bunch of like accelerants in terms of energy. It doesn't have any caffeine or anything. So I don't think it's going to help with sleep necessarily. So I wouldn't take it right before bed, but I think anytime during the day is great. I usually take it first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking with you at one point about your morning routine, which I don't know if you actually are taking YouthRX first thing in the morning, because what I remember you saying was you get up and you don't have anything. You might have water for the first hour, 2 hours. You go to the gym, you do a sauna session, cold plunge, and
Yeah.
you're fasting for the first. How long are you fasting in the morning, and when do you actually break your fast? And are you breaking it with YouthRX?
Yeah, I've done a few different fasting protocols. For years, I was doing intermittent fasting, so I was stopping eating, around 7, and then I would start eating around 11 or 12 the next day,
The following morning,
and
yeah.
um, and then I found that I got actually better results in terms of toning up and having a leaner body with better tone on muscle mass. Um, by doing like basically waking up in the morning and just doing a 12-hour fast, which is pretty normal. And then I just start with protein and water. I literally have a protein powder and water in the morning, a little fiber in there sometimes. And then I literally just go to the gym after I drink that, work out, and then I pick up my eating schedule after that. So I'll come in from the gym, have some YouthRX, and maybe like some green tea or something. And then I'll eat around 10:30, 11, and I'll have like a lot of egg whites. I try to go low dietary cholesterol. Some people it doesn't affect. For me, dietary cholesterol has a big negative impact on my actual cholesterol levels. So I go like pretty low level on egg yolks and fatty meats and things like this. But I have like some lean breakfast meat, egg whites, and like some fruit, some stuff like this. And then in the afternoon, same thing, another 40 grams of protein, some kind of like afternoon light meal, and then dinner I have around 6. So that's kind of the eating schedule, and I always try to stay in a calorie deficit. So if my resting metabolic rate, which is how many calories you have, your body burns just like sitting on the couch. Let's say mine's around 2,000, and I burn an extra 1,000 working out each day. Then I'm going to keep my calorie count around 2,000, and I want to target my body weight, like my ideal body weight, and grams of protein. So if I want to weigh 175 pounds, I want 175 grams of protein. That's how I look at it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. So the 175 grams of protein is part of the 2,000 calories that you're consuming. It's
It
not
is.
2,000 plus the 175.
Exactly. So it's a protein heavy macro load. So essentially, like that protein is going to fill you up too. Because if you had a very low protein, high carb diet, then maybe you're not as full. But think about this. Let's just say a rotisserie chicken is maybe 100 grams of protein, right? So if you have a couple of rotisserie chickens during the day, you're going to be pretty full. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
people who eat a
versus
couple, but
a
yeah,
bag of
yeah,
chips is probably the same amount of calories. You have a bag of chips or a rotisserie chicken, which one's going to keep you full? So
yeah.
that's been helpful because I'm a snacker. Like I grew up snacking, love snacking, easily fall victim to it. So snack attacks, right? And I found myself in this world of healthy foods. I was overindulging on all this like healthy food from Whole Foods. And I was actually putting on weight. Like I probably was carrying another 15, 20 pounds. I didn't need to. And I cut it down by being in this calorie deficit and like cutting out the snacking because I was eating like a lot of nuts and I was eating healthy chips and I was eating like all this other crap. And it just, all the calories were adding up.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. So calorie deficit plus your weight and protein, and then you're able to maintain your body mass. That you're not actually losing weight though, even though you're consistently in a calorie deficit every day.
Yeah, no, I've stabilized my weight. I'm 6 feet tall. My weight's around anywhere between 170, 173. And people
Yeah,
say I look bigger now in terms of size and muscle than because people like
yeah.
a lot of guys are afraid of losing muscle and women are the opposite. They're afraid of gaining too much muscle a lot of times. And so for me, like people will say I look bigger now at 173 or something than 185, which is kind of crazy. But it's just like how you shape your body and how you layer on the muscle and tone up your body. Yeah.
And how do you keep as you're traveling? Kind of tell people how much you're moving around. Like, how do you keep
Yeah.
a morning routine going as you're bouncing between cities and continents?
Yeah, that's a real challenge. I find it helpful to stick with a few staples because I've had this. I think I told you at one point, my morning routine was so ridiculous because I took kind of a year off to just figure out what the heck I wanted to do after Iconic. And, I was still working. I was just working on random projects. I want to create an EMF proof fanny pack. I want to create a water bottle that, has all these special features or who knows what, a bunch of crazy projects. That was like my mad scientist year. And so I had this really robust morning routine, which was basically like wake up, meditate, 10, 20 minutes. Then I would journal. Then I would like have a cup of tea. Then I would do some stretching. Then I would go to the gym and do a cold plunge for 3 to 5 minutes. Then rinse off, put some clothes on, go do some more stretching, start my weight routine, maybe finish with like getting my steps in on the treadmill, get up to like 8,000 steps and then get, at least 12 by the end of the day. But after that morning routine, dude, it starts at 6 a.m. and ends at like 11 a.m. there goes the day.
Yeah,
Plus I'm
yeah.
cooking and eating food along the way. So it was super productive for me. So I've curtailed that quite a bit. All like the busy dads out there are just like, I hate this guy.
Well, they're going like I'm like that sounds amazing. I don't know how I would make that work for my life, but yeah.
Yeah, no. So that has since been curtailed to what's been the most effective for me personally. Let's say this works for everybody else, but I wake up and I still do some journaling. I have a gratitude journal. That I used to think was like, a ridiculous thing, but it's a good way for me to get thoughts out and start with a positive mindset. So I do that. That's from Intelligent Change. They've got a great kind of day planner as well that I use. But
It's a
I
motorcyclist
start
company.
yeah, yeah, great guy. So, but I start with that journal, and then I do a meditation first for 10 minutes. And if people are like, I don't know what to do, what do I start? Do just go on YouTube and look up Joe Dispenza 10-minute meditation. There's a ton of these things or something that style, and it's a guided meditation. It takes 10 minutes. You can play it on YouTube, super easy. And then I do my journaling for like literally it's called a 5 minute journal. So it's like 5 minutes of journaling, getting thoughts out of my head. And I actually have my planner next to that in case I need to do anything like here's to dos for the day, just while I'm thinking about stuff to get it out of my head. I have my protein shake while I'm doing that. And then I literally just walk to the gym. So I'm starting to get my steps in as I'm walking to the gym. And that's whether I'm in Miami or any other city. I'm going to go find a gym to walk to. And if I don't have a gym, I'm going to go for a run or a walk outside. But I want to get movement in within the first couple hours of the day because, like, there's always an excuse not to do it. But if you do it right away, then like you're already ahead of the game and you can just cross it off the list. And I know I'll be happier at the end of the day if I had a workout than if I didn't. So if I start with that, that's like one big win for the day.
And what do you like when you have dads who come to you for some of this coaching? I've got a young daughter at home, year and a half. How do they make that work with kids?
So that's a great question. I like to explain things with stories. There was a guy at
We're from the
Shell,
South. I get it.
yeah, who will remain unnamed, but he was also from Tennessee, one of your kinfolk. And this guy, probably your cousin, This guy had 4 kids. He was lived kind of in a rural area, had kind of a big farm, had to mow his grass with a tractor. You know, when you have a tractor, you have a big yard. And so he cut his own grass, had 4 kids, married, and this guy was yoked. I mean, he looked like, Arnold in his prime. And he was also our number one sales rep globally on a regular basis. And I was just like, I pulled him
Dialed
aside.
in.
I pulled him aside at one of our team meetings and I said, man, how is this even possible? Like, I'm like 25 years old and I feel like I don't have the time to do all the stuff you're doing, let alone just the workout routines. And he said, let me explain working out and how that works. I said, please do, because you're traveling around, you're getting all these workouts in. He said, Billy, how often do you brush your teeth? I said, every day. He said, just once a day? I said, twice a day. He's like, how often do you skip it? I said, I don't skip brushing my teeth. He said, okay, sounds like that's a priority for you. I said, it is. He's like, that's how I look at working out. Working out is like brushing my teeth. If I want to be a great dad, if I want to be a great sales guy for the company, if I want to be all these things, the first thing I need to do is like honor the commitment to myself to go invest in my body. And it's like compound interest, right? It's better to invest early and at any point than it is to invest much later. So that's how we did it. He's like, sometimes I get less sleep. Sometimes I have less time to do other stuff, but I always find a way to work out. I always prioritize that. And there's some little hacks too. Like if people doing a lot of business travel, I always do this. I book a hotel that's got a decent gym, not some like treadmill and like a bench and that's it. It's got to have some half decent gym. And I make sure when I check in that my room is by the gym because I know if I'm passing it, I'm more likely to go. So I make things as convenient for me as possible. So those are always priorities when I'm booking stuff. And I just tell people, like, if I need to block off time on my calendar, I don't want people fill up my calendar. I just say, look, I'm going to be working out in the morning. So that's that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
unapologetic about it. Yeah.
But how was he doing it? He was just basically twice a day here, or it was a commitment to himself, and he didn't do
Yeah,
it
it was a
twice a day.
commitment to
Brush
himself to
his
work
teeth, but
out
he was
once a
able to.
day, every
Yeah,
day, to do something. And it doesn't mean every workout's an hour and 20 minutes. Most of them are probably an hour. A lot of them maybe 30 minutes, but always honoring that commitment of 30 to 60 minutes a day. I mean, you got 24 hours a day. Everybody can carve out 30 to 60 minutes to do something active, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so I really push people to prioritize that.
Oh, that's cool. Good
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the other experiments that you've done. Some like you did some dry fasting. I think you're
Mhm.
also maybe were you trying like taking poop pills or some gut health stuff.
I ate a
I don't
lot
know.
of I ate a lot of poop, Brian, just so you know.
Like I don't know. There was some. I was doing some research for this episode. I don't know. I thought there was a couple other rabbit holes you'd gone down on the.
I've gone down a lot. So yeah. So at a
Yeah,
high level,
some of them that work and some of them that don't work. Let's put it that way. Like that.
yeah, yeah, we can debunk stuff that doesn't work. Fact or fiction. Yeah.
Drinking your own urine does it have health benefits?
Approved.
True question. Is it? Yeah, I don't know.
No,
I
it's
have
not.
friends who've done it.
It's not. I wouldn't suggest drinking your own urine. To be clear, the poop pills is an interesting thing. I have not personally done it, but I know people that have done it and have great success. So essentially, there's been studies, and I'm going to go high level on this because I don't have it in front of me. But essentially, they've done studies on basically like what happens when people are basically sharing the same microbiome, and a lot of that comes from like sounds gross, but fecal material. Like not everybody washes their hands great, and things get scattered around the house. So like this is the bacterial world we live in. So they look at houses of overweight people and houses of like thin people, and basically like the thin people, like if a fat person moves in or an overweight person moves in, then like they tend to get thinner, and vice versa. If like let's say a thin person moves into an overweight house, then like they tend to get overweight because the microbiome shifts. So
Mm.
the premise
To
behind these
match the majority, let's say.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right.
The premise behind these poop pills is to take the poop from like a healthy weight person and like put that into the overweight person's microbiome. Um,
Crazy.
and in a way,
Okay.
it does have that positive. It's not a cure all. People are looking for
Yeah.
the magic pill, whether it's Ozempic or a poop pill or something like this. You still have to put in the work. You can't eat McDonald's every day or a bunch of fried food or whatever. You still need to start cleaning up your diet. Still need to work out, but it does accelerate the process by doing this type of a treatment. So there's that. And then also, like, most people have leaky gut. I suffered from leaky gut for a while. What does that mean? It means like your gut lining should actually be tight like this. And when you take something like an antibiotic, it's like a nuclear bomb. So I'm not saying you shouldn't use antibiotics, but like they're definitely overprescribed. And whenever you do use them, it just kills all the bacteria. So then your gut lining's like this, right? It's just like mesh. So all this stuff's getting through. And if you have a leaky gut, then the food you eat a lot is leaking through, and your body, the food's not supposed to be like in your blood from your intestines. So if that's happening, then your body's attacking it, and you have all these autoimmune responses. And I fought, specifically psoriasis for like 20 years. And the doctors just say, here's a cream, here's a cream, here's a cream. And I found this great gut health specialist when a few years ago when I moved to Miami. And she said, oh, you have a leaky gut. We need to fix that. I said, okay, so what does that mean? Well, we're going to test your microbiome. So that's a poop test where you poop in a little cup, send it off, and they say, hey, here's what your gut looks like. Here's the healthy bacteria. Here's the bad bacteria you have. Here's what you're low and high on. And then you need, ideally some type of clinician to take you through a process to kind of reset that. And so that's the journey I went on, that I've kind of like learned how to do all this stuff. And essentially it's a bunch of supplements, but also adding things like kimchi and sauerkraut to your diet. It's avoiding the bad things that are going to blow you up, like, processed foods and alcohol and antibiotics and things like
Antibiotics.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I'll still take antibiotics if I have to, but I try to avoid them at all costs. It's kind of like
Yeah.
a last resort. Yeah.
And what about things like you had mentioned earlier in the show, talking about, yeah, that your body doesn't deal well with fatty foods, right? Like that you have, well, but high cholesterol, but it was also like you knew based on the caloric content of food that it was going to impact you, whereas it wouldn't impact other people. So, for instance, Dave Asprey, famous for talking about bulletproof coffee, very high in fat
Hmm.
way to take in bulletproof coffee. For those who don't know, it's MCT oil or butter mixed in with coffee, and I assume that
Yeah.
wouldn't work for you, or it'd have some like
Not good for
significant
me.
downsides.
Adverse
Yeah,
effects. Yeah. So
right.
one of the cool tests you could do now is a genetic test, and these genetic tests are pretty comprehensive. Essentially, what you can do is test things like, it'll tell you, are you predisposed based on your genetics to have high cholesterol based on your diet. Some people can eat egg yolks all day and red meat all day and have no problem. For me, not so much. If I have a bunch of, because I was doing this carnivore style diet for a while, a lot of red meat, things like that, and leaner red meats, but still eating some fat, my cholesterol went through the roof. And that's the only really thing that I changed. So I've switched to more of like a fish and chicken heavy diet with occasional red meat. I'm talking to you from Colombia right now. So I had an amazing, beautiful grass fed steak last night cooked in beef tallow. So I'm still going to like splurge and have some meats here and there. Yeah, but typically it's a lot of chicken and fish and veggies and fruits and things like that. But that genetic test will tell you if you're if that's you, if you're predisposed to that. And the other thing it's going to tell you are things like a lot of people were fighting with hair loss, right? So people were taking minoxidil and finasteride and all that, and it'll tell you if you're actually going to benefit from that based on your genetics. It'll tell you a lot of different things about your body. So I encourage people to really start to investigate using some of the technology out there with different tests.
And is the genetic test? This is something beyond just 23andMe. This is
Yeah.
specifically, yeah. What's the name of the test that you're talking about?
There's a few. We can put them in the show notes. I'll share some links. I don't have any affiliations with these companies, but there's a couple I've tried that I really like. And then there's some other tests I'd recommend for everybody, like a Gallery cancer screen. So this particular test screens for 50 different types of blood cancer. Your doctor's typically not going to tell you about it, but I recommend it because I'm like, if you could catch any cancer early, why wouldn't you do it? And I think the cost is around $1,000, but the cost is coming down every year. And I think it's a great investment. Again, no affiliation with that, but I think it's a great test to get. Another one I recommend is called a mediator release test. So that test for food allergies in your blood. And what I found that I had this like extreme reaction to things like coconut, and it's sad because coconut's delicious. And what I found is when I cut that out of my diet and I cut lactose out of my diet, that my skin totally cleared up. right? And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't done that test. And also gluten. I had this massive sensitivity to gluten, basically celiac, that I developed over time. And I had no idea, no idea. I used to think the whole gluten-free thing was just ridiculous for people that were going just from a dietary standpoint, not having celiac. But now, ironically, I guess because of the skepticism I had, the universe has given me this
Decided to give
issue
it to
with
you.
gluten. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But on some of these things, are you able to, let's call it, heal yourself, or is this something where you basically say, "I just can't have coconut for the rest of my life"?
So in theory, once you seal your gut, you can heal yourself. I still haven't gotten to that point. Gluten and coconut are just still really big red flags for me. So it's not like
Yeah.
I'll die, but I'll have massive skin inflammation. So for me, it's just like
Mhm.
not worth having them. And like it's not critical for the quality of my life. So
Yeah.
eventually, I would love to get my gut totally sealed, but it's just it's tough to get all the way there.
And what is your, yeah? So Youth RX in this, let's call it decision matrix. Somebody comes to you and they're like, "Cool, Billy, you look amazing. Really happy with, would like to do something like you're doing or whatnot." You say, start with these tests. You also need to be taking Youth RX. Like, what does it look like when they start on their journey?
Yeah, whether it's me or someone else, the way I look at this is it's all this stuff is super confusing, right? So I really encourage people to find a guide to take them through the process. And you can go say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to Google it or ChatGPT it or whatever. You can do it, but it's not the same as someone who's already done all this stuff and spent the last 20 years going deep on it.
Yeah,
So
they'll
again,
mentor you basically. Yeah.
yeah, basically a mentor, coach, whatever you want to call it. And look, even me, like I still have trainers and stuff I work with and coaches. I think it's totally valuable. So, I think about it like that, and you're investing in yourself. Your car is like, or your body's like your car. It's the one you have for the rest of your life. So if you only had one car forever, it seems like you would put some money in and take care of it. And it's crazy to me that people will go spend $100,000 or something like this on a car, but they get kind of cheap about what they're going to spend on their body. And for me, there's like really no limit to what I would put into my body in terms of like, investment, because it's like, this is what makes me money. This is the only one I have. So what we take people through is basically an initial diagnostic assessment of here's a battery of tests based on your goals. But I don't just shove it down people's throat. I say like, hey, let's evaluate where you're at right now, where you've been, where you want to go, and then we set health goals based on that. And maybe somebody says, I want to reduce my age by 20 years. Cool. Let's figure out what that looks like. I talked to a guy today. He says, hey, I'm 24, but I run this agency. I'm high stress, losing my hair. And I'm like willing to make this investment because I believe the investment in my health now is going to yield compound interest later. And I'm like, man, you're super smart. So his goals are a little bit different, right? Reduce stress. He's got cancer in the family, heart disease in the family. He just wants to get really ahead of it. He also wants to put some muscle on. Cool. So we can develop a plan and a protocol for that. The first 3 months are more like diagnostic, and kind of laying the foundation of like, okay, here's the program. Here's what you're going to do from a resistance training standpoint. Here's what your meal plan is going to look like. Let's just get you like accountable and make sure you're following this and everything works, what supplements to take. And then the next 3 months is more like dialing it in. Okay, so now we start to master the process and figure out what this looks like from like a full on habit and lifestyle change. And that's the goal, is to just really figure out how to jumpstart people into a new lifestyle that's going to be additive to their health span, which is like how many healthy years, not just your lifespan. Because people, when I, here's an example. When I'm in a room speaking and I'll say, hey, who wants to live to 200 years old? Very few hands go up. I would say, okay, new question. Who wants to live to 200 years old but feel and look like they're 40? Most of the hands go up. Yeah. And so it's not about living to 200 years old. It's about how do you live your time on this earth feeling super able-bodied, very mobile, and just so that you can maximize enjoyment of life and also the impact you have in life with those around you. Yeah,
And feel that vitality, right?
exactly, exactly.
So what does that package or what does that coaching look like from you? Are you selling that, or this is something that just friends and family come like through
Yeah,
your network?
Yeah, good question. It's really just people in the network. I'm not like openly advertising or soliciting it. It's me and Dr. Emil is a friend of ours as well. So
Yeah.
he's the MD side of it. I'm more of like the lifestyle kind of biohacking side of it. Um, and so we kind of tag team it and figure out like, okay, what people need and where they want to go. But yeah, a lot of it's all inbound. It's people coming to us and say, hey, listen, you guys are in great shape. You've already figured this stuff out. Like, I'll pay you to kind of teach me how to do all this. So we kind of
Yeah.
hold their hand and walk them through this program we built out, the protocol that's kind of customized by person. So the goal isn't to have like millions of people doing this. I'd love to just, have products that benefit people and maybe like some online programs. But for this like high touch coaching, this is more kind of like, network only. People can reach out, but it's not cheap because there's a lot of tests that are involved in it. And there's a lot of time that Dr. Emil and I have to put into it to make sure people hit the goals that they set. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Makes sense. Got it.
Yeah.
Is there a name for it, or it's strictly, yeah, Billion Dr.
Yeah.
Emil? Let's call
Yeah, no, I mean,
it.
it's the Billion a Meal, look like us program. No, it may change right now. We're just calling it the Iconic Life Protocol. So how do we
Yeah.
help people have an iconic life, and what does that look like? Everybody defines that in their own way. So that's the idea behind it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty. It sounds excellent. Then, for those who don't know, what is the story with Dr. Emil? Who is he?
Yeah, Dr. Meal's a really unique guy. He got an MD. I think I'm 42. I think he's 38. He got an MD in the UK, and so he's a medical doctor and practiced for a few years, and realized that he's just treating a lot of people that were super unhealthy. He's like, all these people that are sick that I'm treating, they're just not healthy. If they were healthy, they wouldn't be here. So he kind of got frustrated with the way the system works, and said, you know what? I just want to like help people become healthy, which unfortunately is not necessarily the primary focus of a lot of doctors. It's a lot of like, yeah, receiving the patients that are already having issues, which we definitely need help with as well. But he said, hey, I want to focus on the health side. So he's been health coaching for like, I don't know, 15, 20 years. He also did some strength competition, powerlifting competitions, strongest man in the world competitions where like they're like throwing boulders around and things like this. He's like 6'4", 6'5", like 230 pounds.
Big
He's probably
guy.
275 then, just massive human. But he's also since then really leaned out, gotten into yoga, still does a lot of resistance training, but just like impeccable, physical specimen of a man. And also a guy that's done a lot of like mindset work in terms of like, how to actually enjoy life. So he brings kind of a unique, element to our partnership. And so that's a little bit of background on him. He also is very familiar with stem cells. He's kind of by day a director of a stem cell clinic in the U.S. called Springs Rejuvenation. So he does a lot of their like medical programming and things like that for stem cell and exosome therapy.
Are you, as we're talking now, you're in Colombia. Are you also there? Isn't that also a hub for stem cell or
It
some of
is.
the, yeah, are you doing anything on a regular basis when you're in Colombia?
I haven't done any stem cells here. There's a clinic I spoke with called BioAccelerator that I've sent a few friends to. The clinic that I'll be doing some stem cell therapy with next month is actually this one in the US called Springs Rejuvenation. And when I looked at it,
The one he advises for.
exactly. And for me, like I'm going to go where I can get the best treatment, right? I mean, I don't have a financial incentive to go to any of these places, so I just want the best for myself. And so what I found is that I can get high quality stem cells that have been third party vetted from a lab in the U.S. And there is a lot of regulation around it. Most people think they're illegal. They're not. They're just like for research purposes. And there's some kind of ways around it. You just have to find the right clinic with the right source. And so they do stem cells and also exosomes. And exosomes is like a derivative of stem cells, as I understand it. And so you kind of get both. They just have a bit different of a function. But I'll do an IV with Dr. Emil because he's going to do the treatment as well on himself. And we'll do that probably late February. And the idea is like, as we age, a lot of aging, gray hair, wrinkles, things like this, right? Fatigue, lack of sleep, injuries that are prolonged, slower metabolism. A lot of this stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it can be traced to a decrease in stem cells. when you look at kids and their ability to heal from something, or just not get wrinkles and gray hair and all this, it's because they have so many stem cells. And around 25, 30, our stem cell count starts to go down, right? And as it goes down, our bodies just start to fall apart. It's like self-destruct mode. So how do we counteract that? Well, the
Take
theory with
blood
stem
from our
cells,
children like Brian Johnson
yeah,
does.
just drink your kid's blood.
Don't. Sorry.
Vampire dad. Yeah, yeah. No, but it's like stem cells. It's like you're literally getting stem cells from umbilical cords that probably would have been discarded, and you're getting these stem cells infused in your body. And so it's not by any means a cure-all, but people are seeing a lot of positive effects, whether it's anti-aging, which I'll do more for that purpose, just get an IV, whether it's like, rejuvenation of the scalp to get blood flow, because a lot of hair loss is because people experience a lack of blood flow in the scalp. So if you can regenerate the scalp with fresh blood flow and make the scalp skin younger, then you can actually like regrow hair there. And a lot of the reason that these hair transplants fail is because they don't solve the root cause, which is a lack of blood flow to the scalp. So it's great you get a bunch of hair put in your head, but then what? So one of the treatments that this clinic in particular does is when people have hair replacement or the transplant surgery, they will make sure they bathe all the follicles in stem cells, and they'll make sure they inject stem cells once a year, exosomes into the scalp for that rejuvenation, which makes total sense to me. So and look, it's for injuries, it's for skin health, there's hair loss, there's a bunch of different treatments. But I found that this clinic was great. There's some other good ones around the world. I didn't feel as confident in the third party testing element when I was looking at places in a third world country versus the US. So it's not to say you're not going to get quality treatment there. I just felt a lot more comfortable with this particular clinic in the US.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah. Have you found something to, you know, I've got more gray hair than you do, but you do have a couple gray hairs, let's be honest. Have you found
Dude, I started
something?
getting gray hair when I was 10. True story.
Okay.
Little girl found
Yeah.
it on the
I
bus.
was wondering if you've stopped it. Yeah. Like stopped it or maybe even reversed it as well.
Well, it's certainly accelerated. You see these pictures of the presidents, basically everybody besides Trump. Trump, like, for some reason, looks identical before and after
Oh, no.
presidency. But all these other guys, it's like, you
Yeah,
look at,
Obama's full gray after he
dude,
came out of
Obama,
office.
Bush, all these guys, they went from like dark hair to like full gray in
Yeah.
4 to 8 years. So I experienced a lot of that when I was running my business, because in the later years, there's just a ton of stress. So I noticed like a lot more gray in my beard and my hair and all this. But in recent years, I've been accused of like dyeing my beard and dyeing my hair and things. I'm like, what? Like, I mean, should I? I don't know. I haven't. And if I did, it'd be a lot of work because there's like a little bit of gray, but not all of it. And they're like, exactly. That's why I think you're doing it. I'm like, what? No.
Because it looks too good.
I know, right? You did just the right mix. I'm like, oh my God, this is way too much effort. I don't care that much about what people think. So yeah, I mean, I have seen it slowing. I'm waiting to see if I can find a way to actually reverse it. But for me, like, as long as I can maintain the hair that I have, I'm super happy.
Yeah.
If it's gray
Yeah.
or whatever, I don't care as much. But I do get a lot of questions on reversal of gray hair. And I know there's been some biohackers try different things, but I think it's like the data is super light. I haven't really seen anything really convincing on full gray hair reversal. That's not just dye, of course. So I have yet to see that accomplished.
What's one of the tools that you're using for tracking your blood work? And why I ask is I use Inside Tracker. You're getting your blood tested, I assume, on a regular basis, and you're curious to see how these changes that you're making in your lifestyle and in your diet, how they show up in your blood work as you and Dr. Emil are working with people. Yeah, what do you guys recommend for storing this information and putting it into some place that actually makes it actionable? And let me add a second part to that, which is I'm watching your hands. You're wearing an Aura ring. I'm wearing an Aura ring. So you have another piece of data that's coming in.
Yeah.
I think in Miami, you're also using a smart mattress, like an 8 Sleep, that is going to report some on how all these different data points that are coming in. How are you able to synthesize them or keep track of them in a way that doesn't give you more gray hair?
That's that's actually what Emil and I do is kind of pull all this together for people because it's all over the place. I think that's a full business opportunity is to kind of aggregate all this data and pull it in for people and put it in something pretty. Inside Tracker is a great tool just for managing blood tests and things like this. A lot of what I do is from day one, I was always just like putting all my medical tests in a Dropbox folder. And you can do some cool stuff with that if you're interested. Like I've done a chat GPT that I set up as like a doctor and just like functional medicine doctor specifically, and then like loaded all my medical data in there and just had a bunch of questions for it. And it had to give me some assessments and I found it to be very accurate. But a lot of what we do as human coaches is figure out like, okay, what does all this data mean, and like what are the important things to look at. So give me the data dump because right now I haven't found a way besides like AI to just put all this stuff and get like a really comprehensive interpretation of what it means. And so a lot of what we do is still just like very simple tracking of data on a spreadsheet and saying, okay, here are the metrics, here are the KPIs, here's what's really important out of all these tests. Let's track these things. Because a lot of people, it's the same thing. It's like, let's look at hormones, let's look at testosterone and estrogen, let's look at cholesterol levels, let's look at vitamin levels, let's see what's going on here. And then we're running some other tests as well. And there's more comprehensive things you can do. You can do a full body MRI. The challenge is there, you start to potentially uncover risks that may be an issue and uncover risks that may not be an issue. And then you're like, well, I got this little thing I
Terrify
should
you.
check it out. And you're
Yeah.
terrified. And then I got to get a biopsy and stick a needle into my liver and see what's going on with these
Jeez.
things. So there's a lot of things that may result in unnecessary, biopsies and things like that. But it's also helped people figure out a lot of stuff that may be a red flag. But I think it's a great investment for people to get a comprehensive blood work panel at least twice a year. And I always advise people to get the additional, like full cholesterol panel and full hormone panel because a lot of times they say testosterone high or low, cholesterol high or low. No. You want a full lipid panel and you want a full hormone panel and like pay the extra 50 or $100 or whatever it is and get that. And then more importantly, find someone that can interpret that for you, whether it's me or someone else, even your physician, just like book a follow-up and like have them help you understand what's happening here. And if the person just says, as just resolution number one, get on a statin or a pharmaceutical, like go see someone else. Doesn't mean statins aren't a solution for some people, but there's a lot of other ways you can address things like dietary changes and supplements.
What about some of the other tools like a blood pressure monitor or the continuous glucose monitor? Both of
Yeah,
those. Do you
yeah.
guys?
I've tried the glucose monitors. I think it's like a good thing to test for a bit. I don't think that people need those all the time unless they're diabetic. But I did for people that don't know, it's like a little arm patch you put on here. It's got a needle and it kind of syncs up with your phone and measures, your insulin levels and how you react to certain foods, things like that. For me, I found it a bit uncomfortable to wear. They're getting smaller and smaller, but I would like knock it off at the gym, things like this. Like one time I like hit it against the bar at the gym and just like ripped halfway off.
Sounds painful. Yeah.
Yeah. But look, I think it's a fun tool to use for like a month or two, just to kind of see how your body reacts to stuff, whether it's like potatoes that are spiking your sugar or who knows what. Because like avoiding glucose spikes is a big thing for anti-aging. Like avoiding sugar, avoiding glucose spikes. That's what all the top anti-aging experts can agree on. Is like sugar is the devil. Sugar feeds cancer. Sugar is just like
Dementia.
really bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms of
And
other
what?
biohacking devices, sleep is a big thing. Like sleep is probably the top element of maintaining a healthy longevity regimen of anti-aging and this kind of stuff. It's because like you'll die without sleep, right? You literally die. So you can go without water. We'll talk about that in a second, dry fasting, but you can go without water for 7 days up to a month sometimes. So if that's the case, but you can't live without sleep, let's spend some money on sleep, right? You spend who knows how much on a car. Let's invest in a nice mattress. Let's, ideally no synthetic, materials that are going to give you cancer later in life. The right temperature. You've got technologies like a chili pad and sleep 8 that's, you can set the bed to different temperatures on each side because, this is always a problem with partners. I want it hot, I want it cold, blah, blah, blah. Cool. You set the mattress at a certain temperature and forget it. And starting to, like you said, it's starting to measure sleep quality and things like this. So, I don't like to have too many electronics in the bedroom. I'll sleep with this. This one's actually an ultra human ring. So similar to Aura, this is kind of their competitor that I'm trying out. But this gives me some good data. It just kind of dies quick and only lasts like Aura for a couple days. So I actually have like this old school Fitbit. This has been great for just sleep and steps because I had an Apple Watch, but I found that like I didn't like getting the phone call notifications and text, and you can turn it off, but inevitably things still pop up and it's distracting. So I want kind of like a smart dumb watch. I just want to be able to see how many steps I have. I want to see the time, and I want to be able to set alarms. And that's what this Fitbit has. And it also does really, really good job tracking my sleep. So I sleep with this on, and the battery life is probably like 5 to 7 days. So it's less of a pain to charge than the Aura. And I wear both of them now because I've had this for about a month, and I'm comparing the data between the two to see like what the differences are.
Are they pretty close? The
They are,
data?
they're pretty close on sleep. The challenge is I don't get proper notifications on the battery life, so a lot of times it misses the sleep data because it's like, oh, didn't have enough battery to record or who knows what on the ring. And so I find the watch is much better for sleep. And I like to wake up and be like, what time is it? Do I need to wake up or whatever? So that's been more functional for me. But I've also seen people that have chronic sleep issues and they have like a Whoop or some other electronic device and they never take it off, which is common. And they take it off for like a week and they have amazing sleep. So sometimes these devices we rely on to measure our sleep can actually induce anxiety and also create interference in our sleep patterns. So it's good to just totally detox from electronics. Like for phones, I always keep my phone in the kitchen on airplane mode. And my mom's always appalled. Like, what if something happens? If there's an emergency. I said, what am I going to do at 3 a.m. if there's some emergency across the U.S.? Like, I
Yeah.
wish I could be Superman and fly there, but like, guess what? I could do nothing. Right. So we'll talk about it in the morning, you know? Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you though is that you've got, let's say, like allergy test, genetics test, gut health test, blood work test, those four, maybe a
Yeah.
fifth one for like the pre-cancer screening, the Gallieri.
Mhm.
Is another big one that I'm missing?
Yeah, so another thing I always encourage people to do is get a DEXA scan, which is a full scan of your body, and it scans your muscle mass, fat, all that kind of stuff. These things are a few $100, and a lot of the people that will do a DEXA scan will also do a VO2 max test, and that's basically kind of like testing your cardio conditioning, right? You could do it on a rowing machine, you could do it on a treadmill, and that's going to, let's just say that's another $100 or something. So let's say you invest $500, you get a DEXA scan, you get a VO2 max test. Those are great things to do every 6 to 12 months, 12 months at minimum, ideally every 6 months. And essentially, like you're getting a pretty good feel for like what the layout of your body is in terms of like fat muscle composition and also like what your cardio conditioning is because your VO2 max score is highly correlated to how healthy you are and how long you're going to live and how healthy you're going to live. So we mentioned DEXA scan, VO2 max, those are at least every 12 months, ideally every 6 months. Blood panel at least twice a year. Extra comprehensive one once a year. Genetic test, you need that once in your life. You don't let anybody convince you need multiple genetic tests. Hopefully your genes are not changing. The Gallery test, you could probably do that every couple of years. That's the cancer screening for 50 different types of blood cancer. Um,
The
and then
allergy
really you
test.
want, yeah. And also like the gut health test, which is like a microbiome test, and the MRT test, which is the mediator release test. Those two you could probably do every year if you wanted. But once you kind of know your food allergies, like you should be set for that for a bit. And then the gut health is definitely going to change every year. So I would do that once a year. Yeah.
And have you seen anywhere that people go to get their sleep tested? And what I mean by that is that you have wearables that can tell you how you're sleeping, but are there labs or are there places that you can go? You and I talked a couple years ago about that you had a deviated septum. You found out
Mhm.
about it somehow, and it
Yeah.
impacts your sleep and your breathing. Um, would that be picked up in like a VO2 max test, or how does that?
Yeah. Actually, when I had,
I have like sleep apnea in my family, so it's something that I don't know what causes it, anyways, but yeah, it's like it's something that would be the trackers are like downstream of the sleep issues, and so how do you
they
get
are.
some like above it? Let's say.
Yeah, I
upstream?
mean, there's some labs that we put people in touch with that could do like a sleep diagnostic where you go in the lab and sleep there and they kind of test that. But I haven't found anybody that does a lot of this stuff at your home yet. I think that'll be another business that's popping up in the next couple of years is how do we diagnose people, and maybe a company like 8 Sleep jumps ahead and figures this out. The
Mhm.
deviated septum thing I actually found out when I went to a ENT, ear, nose, and throat doctor, about my shingles because I had this vicious ear infection and I didn't realize, but like the face paralysis was linked to it. And I hadn't even really noticed. I just thought my face was kind of doing something weird. And I walk in, he goes, "My man," he said, "You have shingles." I said, "Oh God, what? Like what they talk about in the commercials for the old people? You know, like if you have shingles, take this medicine."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, you have shingles. You're like you have Bell's palsy in your face." And he's like, "Let me." He's like, "Ear, nose, and throat, right?" They're checking all the things. And he looks at my nose. He goes, "Oh my gosh, you got a massively deviated septum." He's like, "How
Hmm.
do you sleep?" I said, "I think I sleep okay." He's like, "Well, it's because you're a healthy weight. But if you're overweight, like you'd be snoring and wouldn't be able to sleep and all this." So a big part of having better sleep is maintaining a healthy body weight, and also just like having the right lifestyle to support behind it. But sometimes you have to do things like people have surgery to fix a deviated septum and things like this. And there's things you could do, like I've done the nose strips that I think I showed you at one point. Those are good that I'll do if I really need a good night's sleep. Sometimes layer in melatonin because I'm typically low in melatonin. I wear red light glasses at night, so it helps the body start producing melatonin earlier. Try to like reduce fluorescent lights, like I'm in this office right now, but when it turns 6 o'clock here, I'm going to kind of dim the lights and do lamps and things like this.
Yeah.
Put the red light glasses on, all that fun stuff.
And you're wearing eye mask and earplugs, I remember as well, right?
Yep. I'm asking earplugs each night. Yeah, I want to be blackout. I don't want to hear anything. Yeah.
Would be I can imagine if the girl that you're dating is going to look at you and be like, "Cool, so when is the window in which we are, you know, let's call it, I don't know, not I don't even talk about being intimate or what. I'm just basically saying like, cool, like she wants to stay out till 11 o'clock. You're like, no, I actually need to start winding down about 6 o'clock. I got to put my like blue light blockers on. I'm not
Oh.
I'm not going to have dinner after 7 because it really impacts my sleep. I know
Oh my
that I need to
God.
stop eating, and I'm on a 12 hour fast from 7 to 7. And she's
This
like, yeah, but
is
Billy, it's yeah, go ahead.
this has been a real challenge, Brian.
Yeah,
Because yeah,
yeah,
as you can imagine, I've become this person that went from running nightclubs and eating like horrible food to the person that's extreme opposite end of the spectrum. I've always been a
yeah,
person of extremes, including this, and now I'm like, must finish eating by 7, go for a walk after dinner, have my glasses on, go to sleep, get in bed by 9, wind down routine, no electronics, wake up at 5 or 6 a.m., get going
yeah,
again, all this kind of stuff. And so, like a lot of people will respect the discipline, and ideally, I find a woman that's on exactly the same wavelength. But what I found is that like there's got to be, at least for me, everybody's got to make their own decision. I've kind of swung back to the middle of like I need to have some compromise. It doesn't mean I want to have a 10 p.m. dinner, but it does mean sometimes I'm going to stay out later. And it does mean sometimes I'm not going to go sleep right on time. So 80% of the time, I'll do that, right? But I'm willing to make some modifications in that to like be with the right person because I found that it's in my last relationship. It was really a real hindrance because she liked to go to the gym at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night because no one was there, and she liked to have dinner after that, right? I'm like, Gym at 8 or 9, I'm starting my wind down routine. And she's like, "You're crazy. You're so strict and disciplined." Right. And in a way, there was attraction to that. And there was a way that part of that kind of pushed us apart. So I think it's important for people to figure out with a partner, like, how do we find that balance? And my parents, they're total opposite. My mom's super early bird. My dad, wakes up at like 10 or 11 a.m. because he's up all night. And maybe that's why they're still together. I don't know. I always joke with my mom.
because out of 24 hours, they're only awake with each other for
Yeah, I told
8 or 9
her,
hours of the day.
I said, Mom, you shouldn't complain. Like, this is why you guys are still together because you got like a 2 to 3 hour overlap each day. It's a lot easier than being with someone full time. But yeah, I've definitely like I've like moderated my lifestyle, and I know I've also realized it's important to think that and acknowledge that you catch people on different paths in life, and everybody's not
Yeah,
on the same timing. And for me, I'm 42, and it's easy to forget. I was way different at 32, right? I was in a whole different ballpark, even though I was starting to get in this world of health and wellness. And so I shouldn't expect for people to meet me exactly where I'm at on my path. And I shouldn't judge them for being ahead or behind me or wherever they're at. I just need to accept people where they're at in their health journey and like figure out if it aligns with my life or not. And so that's been like a big inflection point, and really the last
And
two
if they have the
months.
same values, like do they
Yeah,
value health? Like you can
yeah,
tell.
yeah,
It might be that the gym schedule doesn't line up, but you get a sense about that you and who you're talking to, that you two share similar values.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
That's been a big focus, is like whether it's romance or friendships, is like finding the people that share those core values and have that alignment, and people that you could grow with on different fronts. It's like way more of a priority than like having the exact same bedtime. And it's funny, I thought it was so important. I was like, I have to find someone with the same bedtime. This is so tough, and not willing to compromise. And I've got a cousin that she's a dermatologist, and her husband is an ER surgeon. He's like, dude, we have a great marriage, and like I got crazy hours. And so that was like, that was just like something that was a real. I was like, a come on, dummy, like open up a little bit, be more flexible.
all right, so let's wrap up. Anybody who wants YouthRX, where do they go to get it? How do they go to learn more about you, what you're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So Instagram's the easiest way to find me. It's Iconic Life, ICONIC. How it's normally spelled. Life is me, or just look up Billy Bosch on Instagram. And for those wondering, does he think his life's iconic? No, actually, I just wasn't so smart when I started Iconic Protein, and I thought I'll just call it Iconic Life. And my marketing person was like, "No, dummy, it needs to be the same as the website name." So everything was Drink Iconic. Anyway, so I was like, I'll just keep this for my own since I already created it. And so
I
Iconic
like it.
Life on Instagram. And then in terms of just reaching out to me and finding out about these programs, that's the easy way. I've got my own website too, billybosch.com. BOSCH is the last name. That's a great way to reach out and learn about that. In terms of YouthRX, the website is GetYouthRX.com. And that's the daily all-in-one aging supplement. And look, I don't force supplements on people, but if people are looking for an easy button for longevity mixes, I'm really confident in our mix, and we offer a money back guarantee, all this fun stuff. I don't want customers that don't enjoy the product. So we stand behind what we have. We do third-party lab testing on everything. And I personally love the product and take it. I made it for myself, and if other people buy it, then that's great.
Yeah, helps
Yeah,
fund your habit.
yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Thanks for your time, Billy. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for having me.